Hi, my name's Sarah, and I've always been an activist. But 4 years ago, I felt completely burnt out and thought that I'd actually have to give up fighting for a better world, which is pretty scary because I've always been passionate about challenging injustices and inequality. I grew up in a low-income area of Liverpool in the 1980s under a Thatcher government and a militant council, but surrounded by incredible people with incredible talent and really hard working. And it was really horrible to see that structures and stereotypes were stopping them being able to fulfill their potential. I grew up in an incredible activist family, very inspiring people. Does this work? And there's me, aged 3, with local campaigners fighting to save good local housing from demolition that the council wanted to demolish to build a park that no one wanted and would have made the area unsafe. I was voted head girl by my peers in school. I campaigned throughout uni on local and global issues. And for the last 6 years, I've been lucky enough that I've been a full-time campaigner and mobiliser for large international charities. But a few years ago, I felt discouraged, exhausted, and actually doubting my effectiveness as an activist. Marching and shouting drained me. I didn't like demonising people or telling people what to do. I didn't feel like I fitted into many activist groups, and I'm more of an introvert, so being around large groups of people just zapped me of energy. No offence. Around the same time, I got into cross-stitch because I loved painting, but my poxy flat in London was too small and I was travelling a lot with work. And I started to cross-stitch and I loved it. And I'd do it for absolutely hours where you'd forget to eat and then you'd look up and suddenly the sun had gone down. But I was still always thinking about how I wanted to keep that passion and that fire in my stomach to fight for a world and be the change I wished to see inside it. And I didn't want to lose that. So I Googled craft and activism. And this word craftivism popped up. For the southerners in the room, that's craftivism. And it was coined by a lady called Betsy Greer in 2003. So I contacted Betsy and asked if there was any groups I could join or projects I could do, and there wasn't. But with her blessing, I started coming up with my own projects and documenting them on a blog I created called A Lonely Craftivist, about how I didn't fit in and how I was burnt out, and it was so emo, it's a little bit embarrassing. Today, I want to talk to you about Craftivism. Mary Poppins famously sang, "A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down." Thanks. I want to talk to you about 3 ways that I think craft, a spoonful of craft, can help the activism go down, and how it can be a really good part of the activism toolkit. Not the only form of activism to do at all, but particularly helpful for more long-term transformative activism. The first thing is that craftivism is slow activism. A lot of activism we do is really fast. It's sign this, do this, march here, hold a placard, lots of doing. And I did all of that, and I was knackered. And I was also worried that I wasn't making time to really think about these issues. You know, we know from here and today that injustices are complex, messy, there's often no one solution or one quick fix. So why do we think that just doing things quickly as a reaction would really solve the problems? Craft is naturally slow. Stuff like cross-stitch and hand embroidery, because it's slow and it's quiet and it's repetitive with your hands, it's naturally very meditative. For me, it gave me time to think about a lot of injustices that I was really angry about. It made me put myself in the shoes of the victims and the perpetrators and everyone in between. It made me think about how I could be the best global citizen I could be, how I could be the best consumer, how I could be the best voter and constituent, the best family member, the best neighbour, and the best global neighbour, and really look at all of those things. It also gave me time to stitch messages that I was passionate about. And when you stitch those messages, you're not going to stitch something you don't believe in. So you really take ownership of what you're creating in this physical small thing that you're doing. Craft connects your hands, your heart, and your head. And when you connect that to justice issues, I think it can be world-changing, both personally and politically. Pretty good for a bit of fabric, eh? The second thing that I think Craftivism is brilliant at is that it can engage people in more of a transformative and respectful way. Often, again, as an activist, I was just telling people what to do. I was with my MP, I was signing lots of petitions, I was saying, you should do this. She was new to the area, and I was new to the area. So the first correspondence I actually got back from her was to tell me to stop. She said it was wasting her time and mine, and she wouldn't budge on some of the issues that I was contacting her about. And I thought, what? You're not a very good MP, are you? Thought you want my vote, don't you? This is awful. And it made me feel really disempowered as well. But I thought, hang on a minute. She's got a point. I don't know her. She doesn't know me. She doesn't know I genuinely care about these issues. And for me, they all come under the umbrella of inequality. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I decided to hand embroider a handkerchief, as you do. And this is what it says. Dear my MP, I'm not going to say her name. As my MP, I'm asking you to please use your powerful position to challenge injustices, change structures, keeping people poor, and fight for a more just and fair world. I know that being an MP is a big and tough job, but please don't blow it, in capital letters. This is your chance to make a real positive difference, smiley face. Yours in hope, Sarah, my surname and my postcode, so she knew I was a constituent. And I asked to meet her, which she has to do because I'm a constituent, and I gave her this handkerchief with a smile on my face and said, I'm the one who's been sending you this information, and I want you to use your job in the best way you can. And straight away, she didn't think, oh no, it's a scary activist who's going to shout at me and threaten me and therefore close off. She thought, oh my word, you've spent a lot of time making this, and she could see how messy it was on the back, so I didn't show my grandmother before I gave it to her. And automatically, it created a really safe space for us to discuss what she believed in, what I believed in, how we could work together on some things, how we could challenge each other on others, and really just try and build up a respectful conversation. Because I think being loving, critical friends is much more effective than being aggressive enemies when we want to change the world. The second thing is that I had the same problem a little bit with the public. I was really worried that I wasn't engaging the public in a respectful way. I was treating people a bit like robots, saying, here's the issue, please sign this, it's really urgent and we need to do this. And I was actually stunting people's growth and opinions on those issues as well. Nowadays as well, we're so bombarded by so much information, it's really easy for us to block it all off, and even useful stuff and important stuff like injustice issues that we shouldn't ignore. Yeah, shock tactics can pull at the heartstrings for a short time, but I was worried that people were reacting more in a transactional way than a transformative one. So my response to that issue was, I'm sure you can guess, make mini protest banners, which are mostly cross-stitched. For me, I wanted to do these mini things because I think in this day and age we live in, often small and beautiful things are much more powerful and big and brash messages. The messages aren't telling people what to do, they're provoking a conversation. So it might be a quote, a statistic, a slogan, or a question, and they're there to engage whoever sees it. They're always put off eye level, so people don't feel preached at, but actually feel quite excited that they found this little unique, delicate creation that someone's made anonymously. And they're put in areas that are relevant to that issue. So I put this one near where my old office was in Southwark, where lots of lads would hang out. And I thought, I'm sure, like in Liverpool and in Brixton, they're under a hell of a lot of pressure to glamorize guns and to feel like they need them. And I thought, they're not going to listen to me. But this quote, so brilliant from Martin Scorsese, maybe that'll make them think about how violence isn't the answer. My hope with leaving these mini protest banners around was that people might find them, be provoked by the issue and think quite deeply about them. Maybe take a picture on their phone and tweet it or Instagram it or share it on Facebook or Pinterest. Maybe just show it to their friends in the pub over a drink and say, oh, I found this really random thing, what do you think? And create a natural conversation about these issues so that these issues aren't ignored and only seen when there's an urgent petition that we need to sign. And all of that happened, which was ace. Also, people started blogging about it as well and about how this made them feel. And we got one woman who even asked to buy this print for her banker friend as a secret Santa gift one Christmas. And he contacted her back on New Year's Day and said, thank you so much for the present, I really love it, and it caused a really good conversation with me and my wife. Now, that's not going to change the world, but I think it's one part of activism that can be really powerful. The third thing I want to talk about is how craftivism can be a really good bridge into activism for a lot of people, especially people who don't need to, it's not on their doorstep, these injustices, so you don't need to think about them as much. Often we're very lucky that we can just turn off the news and not think about our global neighbours across the world. So what happened after me setting up my Lonely Craftivist blog was suddenly all these people wanted to join in what I was doing, which I didn't expect at all. People all over the world contacted me saying, I really agree with you as well. I don't feel like I fit into that scary world, but I love craft, or I'm more of a creative introvert, and this is something that I want to do. As you know, I don't really like being around groups of people. I quite like doing things on my own, but I couldn't tell them to go away, could I? So in 2009, I created the Craftivist Collective with a small group of people to help me create the manifesto and go ahead with it. And now we have thousands of people all over the world who support us and share what we do, and many of them actually doing our projects or being inspired to do their own, which I think is amazing. We also encourage people to craft in public, either on their own or in small groups, not big ones because it can make people nervous. And we ask them to craft and just sit there. Don't say to people, do you want to ask me what I'm doing? It's really important, quite useful. You just sit there, you stitch, you talk to each other, and half the time we don't even do that because we're engrossed in what we're doing. And it means people naturally are intrigued and give us funny looks and ask us what we're doing. And we all know that if people initiate the conversation, they're much more likely to be engaged in that discussion rather than just preaching at them. I have this little pop-up Craftivist suitcase, and I go around the country with it and use the hashtag, and I foursquare where I am, and I tweet and Instagram where I am, and it might be a festival, it might be an event, and people can come and join me in a bit of craftivism after it. And if they've just heard someone like Indigo or Zimbo perform, it can be a really good tool for them to reflect on the stuff that's been talked about and stitch a little fabric footprint about their journey and what they're going to do next after hearing those issues. For crafters as well, it's really good because if they're talking to the public about what they're doing, if they're being asked what to do, it can build up a lot of confidence in those new craftivists who might be nervous to talk about issues. So it's a sneaky way of training them up as activists. We also get lots of contact from organisations who wouldn't normally engage in activism or politics. Every year we work with cult jewellers Tatty Divine, who have an enormous following, and we do our Valentine's Day project with them about how we show our love to our global neighbour and not just our crush or our spouse. We've worked with Secret Cinema, where over the space of a month we engaged 5,000 people, all dressed up as prisoners, and we got them stitching and reflecting about the revolving door problem in the prison system and what prisoners have to go through, all before they watch the film Shawshank Redemption. We also, we're doing a boot camp this autumn with Craft Scotland. So we're training up 15 crafty people in Scotland to really train them on how to use craftivism effectively in their communities and interest groups to help with local and global issues. And we get asked a lot by galleries to work with them in connection with their exhibitions. So they'll ask us to do an activity that links in with their exhibitions. So last year we worked with the Hayward Gallery when the Tracy Emin exhibition was on, and we linked in an activity there on their little roof one evening. And it was brilliant because we got to engage their audience in activism after the exhibition. But we also had crafty people tweeting weeks in advance that they were going to go to the Tracy Emin exhibition, particularly to see the quilts, because we all love that because we're a bit geeky on craft. But also because they were really keen to join the Craftivists on that night and do a bit of activism in a way that was safe and not too big a leap for them. It was an amazing night, and lots of people even came on their own as quite shy people to dip their toe into our form of activism to see if it was something that they could do. We ended up with over 80 people squeezed in this room on the roof, all crafting together, and it was hard to actually try and kick them out at the end of the night because they didn't want to leave. And it was a brilliant place for them to meet each other, discuss these issues, connect with each other, and work together. And online social media is such a complement to the work we do. We also get loads of media, which we never really promote or ask for. It makes us a bit uncomfortable. But it's amazing. We get a hell of a lot of media from arts and culture magazines and websites. And again, places where you wouldn't normally see activism issues or be provoked to think globally and holistically about what we do on this planet. It's a great way to engage creative people to say, look, you can use your passions and talents to make the world a better place and spark off some ideas. Social media, like I said, is brilliant for us as well. And I've also now got a Craftivism column in a craft magazine. So regularly, craft lovers can read about how they can use their passions and talents to challenge injustices in the world and think about those root causes and how we can be part of the solution and not the problem. We have a book out in September, which is very small, called A Little Book of Craftivism. It's lots of images, top tips, and projects you could do. And the hope is that it will be on a bookshelf with other arts and craft resources in different craft shops and art shops, and not just in a political corner of an activist bookshop. I'm hoping it'll be in lots of people's Christmas stockings as well, and they'll share it with each other so we can get activism out to people in different areas they wouldn't normally see it, but in a very encouraging, hopeful way rather than doom and gloom. Our last project was in the lead up to the G8 summit last month in the UK. And it was all about how we need to be part of the solution to world hunger and not the problem. That's an enormous issue to think about, and there's so many solutions and problems in it that we made jigsaw pieces to say, we know it's complex, but we're going to write messages on jigsaw pieces about how we can all be part of the solution and make the world a more beautiful place than it is. We ended up with over 700 jigsaw pieces for this installation that goes around the whole of the UK this year. People also made them for their MPs as well, to have really good conversations with them about how they could both be part of the solution in different ways and have that conversation. And many of the people who made the jigsaws had never met their MP before or didn't even know who they were. We had over 120 blogs written by different crafters about their experience of doing the project and about the issue itself, and over 3,000 tweets using our hashtag #I'mApiece. And that shows basically the craft community is pretty big because it reached nearly over 9 million people just on Twitter. So for me, craftivism saved me. It stopped me being a burnt-out activist and turned me into a happy and healthy craftivist. And I love that I'm seeing people join in with what we do and slowly getting more politicized and seeing that they actually have a lot of power as individuals and collectives. Craft helps you reflect, helps you engage people in a respectful way, and it can be a brilliant bridge into activism that people wouldn't normally go on because it's a bit scary. I think craftivism is transformational. And most of all, it's a really good reminder to all of us that we need to have activism threaded throughout everything we do. It shouldn't be something we opt into once in a while when there's an emergency. We should always be thinking about how we can help each other in the world and not harm each other. That's quite a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? But I think with a spoonful of craft, it can really help the activism go down, don't you think? Yes. Thanks a lot.